how well do we, really know the people who reach the highest offices? We see the public face, the policies, but what about the really intense private things that shape them?
Exactly. It's easy to just see the politician, isn't it? But their core, who they really are, that's often forged way earlier by experiences most of us never hear about.
Right. And that's where we're exploring today. This isn't really about the politics per se. It's more about the person seen through his son's eyes. We're looking at 41, A Portrait of My Father, the book by George W. Bush about his dad, George H.W. Bush.
Yeah, the goal here is to kind of unpack the key insights, the really defining moments that this very personal account reveals.
Getting that son's perspective, it's pretty unique for a president.
Yeah.
Right? It lets us see the human side, the values, the struggles, sort of separate from the day-to-day political battles. And, speaking of getting insights from books, if you enjoy this kind of analysis, you might want to check out our YouTube channel, Mindful Moments. We use AI to analyze books, hoping to spark a bit of reflection, maybe some critical thinking, just another way to explore interesting ideas.
Good point. Okay, so let's get into this portrait. The book kicks off really with the foundations, his parents. It makes it incredibly clear just how central Prescott and Dorothy Bush were.
Absolutely. His father, Prescott Bush, quite the figure, according to the book. Yale, served in World War I over in France, then settled the family in Greenwich. He was in investment banking. But the book really hammers home that for Prescott, character was everything. Way more important than just making money.
And what really comes through about Prescott in the book is this deep commitment to service. The USO, the UNCF, and that story about the Merritt Parkway. Working tirelessly, unpaid to get those easements from homeowners. It wasn't about personal gain at all.
No, it was about the community. And his integrity. The book highlights that too. Like in '63, publicly denouncing Nelson Rockefeller, a political ally, after his divorce and remarriage. Just purely on principle. Keeping his word, his values. That was apparently non-negotiable.
Right. And then there's his mother, Dorothy. The book paints her as, well, the source of this deep faith, this discipline, daily Bible readings,
Yeah, Proverbs 27.2 is mentioned. Let another man praise thee and not thy own mouth. That idea of humility. And church wasn't optional.
No, definitely not. But the book also shows this surprising competitive side to her, especially later on, and this sense that she was somehow almost ageless, just full of energy.
So the picture you get from the book, from those early years, it's one where things like service, integrity, humility, faith, they weren't just talked about.
No, they were lived by his parents every day. It really formed the bedrock of who he became.
Okay, so then the book moves on to the experiences that really tested that character. World War II obviously looms large.
Huge. The book describes his reaction to Pearl Harbor as just this immediate, almost visceral sense of duty. That idea, too much is given, much is required. Apparently, he felt that very deeply.
It really makes you think about that generation, doesn't it? Accepted to Yale, but nope, birthday hits 18 and he enlists. Chooses to be a Navy aviator.
And that moment the book describes when he told his father, Prescott shaking his hand but weeping. Wow, that says so much, doesn't it? Pride, fear.
Yeah, and learning to fly sounds brutal. Those planes, the yellow peril, the washing machine. So many guys washed out.
But he stuck with it. Became the youngest pilot in the Navy, just under 19. Shows that determination the book talks about.
And then combat. Chichijima, the book's account of that mission. Getting hit by anti-aircraft fire, bailing out, hitting his head on the tail.
Pulling the ripcord too early, but somehow surviving. It's just an incredible story of luck, really, and maybe sheer will.
Being rescued by the USS Finback, the submarine. The book shares these really poignant details from his time on board, doesn't it? Censoring mail, kind of connecting with ordinary lives back home.
Standing watch alone at night, thinking about family, dreaming of Barbara. It's very humanizing.
And the key thing the book emphasizes here is that even after that, after nearly dying, he could have gone home.
Right. But he chose to go back to his squadron, that sense of duty again, right? Forged in those early values, just wouldn't let him quit.
It was during the war he married Barbara Pierce. The book mentions the handwritten invitation, very wartime wedding, shortest honeymoon ever.
And his promise not to dance again, which clearly didn't stick.
No.
Yeah.
But the book uses these wartime experiences, it seems, to show how fast he had to grow up. I mean, by 21, he'd faced death, lost comrades.
It built this incredible resilience, reinforced that idea of satisfaction from serving something bigger than yourself.
So after the war, graduates Yale, and then makes this move that must have seemed crazy to his family and friends back east.
Totally against the grain. Instead of Wall Street, which was the expected path, right? He heads to West Texas.
Yeah, the book says the idea actually came from a friend of his father's, Neil Mallon. Learned the oil business ground up with dresser industries.
Yeah.
Bold move.
Very independent. And Barbara was game. The book quotes her saying she was young and in love, sure, but also hints it was maybe a chance to escape some of those East Coast family pressures.
But Odessa, Texas.
Ah.
Wow. The book paints a picture, doesn't it? Small, dusty, hot, unpaved streets, oil derricks everywhere.
Just a completely different world, blue-collar culture. As the
Yeah.
book puts it, people there had never heard of Yale.
Right. And the anecdotes are great. The Bermuda shorts incident.
Oh, yeah.
Right. Chicken fried steak for the first time. And that story about his mother smelling gas and panicking.
Only for the neighbor to calmly explain, oh, no, that's just the oil fields. Welcome to Texas.
Their living situation, too. Sharing a bathroom in a duplex with women entertaining clients, as the book politely puts it. A world away from Greenwich.
Absolutely. Force them to adapt fast, shed any kind of entitlement pretty quickly, you'd imagine.
And yet, he didn't just, survive there. He actually thrived. The book really highlights how he built his oil business, not by being some slick salesman.
No, it was about building real relationships, earning trust, person to person.
So the book presents these two big experiences, the war and Texas, as these, crucibles, forging independence, resilience.
And exposing him to a whole different slice of America.
Yeah.
Really solidifying that sense of duty beyond just his own background or comfort zone.
Okay, so after building a successful career in oil, the book talks about his shift into politics, starting out as a Republican in Texas, which back then was.
Overwhelmingly Democrat territory,
Yeah.
Holding meetings in his living room. He really believed Texas needed a functioning two-party system.
He got involved in local Republican stuff, Eisenhower campaigns, and that first big run for Senate in '64 against Ralph Yarborough, the LBJ ally.
Tough race. The book mentions LBJ personally working against him, plus being tied to Goldwater, who wasn't popular that year. But the book says he learned a lot from losing that one. Crucial campaign lessons.
Then he wins a seat in Congress, and the book emphasizes his character there, worked incredibly hard, kept his word, shared credit.
And that vote for the open housing bill, receiving death threats for it, the book uses that to show real courage, sticking to principle even when it was dangerous.
The 1970s, as the book lays it out, were just this whirlwind of different high-level jobs.
Incredibly diverse roles, yeah.
Sure.
UN ambassador mastering that personal diplomacy, living in the Waldorf penthouse. Bit different from the Odessa duplex, huh?
Just a bit. Dealing with huge global issues like China's UN representation.
Then, RNC chairman right in the middle of Watergate, talk about a crisis. The book shows him managing the party through that, learning from Nixon's mistakes, but importantly, not getting cynical.
And it notes his knack for turning opponents into friends, like the Democrat Bob Strauss. Pretty remarkable.
Then envoy to China, adapting again, famously riding his bike around Beijing, building those personal connections, meeting Mao, and crucially, Deng Xiaoping. That relationship would matter later.
And finally, CIA director. Rebuilding morale after all those scandals. The book notes how he respected the intelligence officers, called them patriots.
Yeah, chosen office right there at Langley among them, even brought in Lionel Hampton to play for the staff. Little touches like that.
So the book argues that this string of roles, it gave him this just unparalleled range of experience.
Exactly. Learn about personal relationships, loyalty, managing huge organizations in crisis. Gain this incredible global perspective few leaders ever get.
As the book moves into his later life, it really doesn't shy away from the tough stuff, the personal adversity. Losing his daughter Robin to leukemia, that's portrayed as just devastating.
Utterly. The diagnosis was grim. The book talks about the doctor actually crying when delivering the news. But he and Barbara, they just refused to accept it. Took Robin to Memorial Sloan Kettering.
And those 6 months. The book describes Robin's suffering and Barbara's incredible strength, that rule about never crying in front of Robin. The book calls it heroic stoicism.
While his coping mechanism, according to the book, was just frantic activity, constant research, meetings, throwing himself into work.
There's that moving detail, too, about his father Prescott coming down to New York just to be there, to comfort Barbara.
And you see how deep that pain remained when, years later, during the 1980 campaign, he was asked about facing personal difficulty. His response, quoted in the book, "Have you ever sat and watched your child die?" Just stops you in your tracks.
It really underscores how these deep personal tragedies shape people, even those on the biggest stages. His life wasn't just smooth sailing, despite the background.
Not at all. And he faced political difficulties, too. The book expresses, well, almost bafflement at the whim factor charge during the '88 campaign, given his war record.
Yeah, standing up to death threats as a congressman,
Yeah.
it didn't quite add up. The book also mentions that nasty gossip campaign about an alleged affair.
And Barbara's fierce reaction, furious at their son for even bringing it up publicly, shows that protective instinct.
And his loyalty, tested again during Iran-Contra. The book says advisors were telling him, distance yourself from Reagan, it's politically smart.
But he wouldn't do it, stuck by Reagan, that principle of loyalty again, even when it cost him politically.
So the book uses these challenges, personal and political, to really reinforce those core traits we talked about. Resilience, family love, integrity, loyalty under pressure.
Moving into the presidency itself, the book touches on key moments. Managing the end of the Cold War, for instance. His diplomacy with Gorbachev, very careful, very deliberate.
His reaction to the Berlin Wall falling, surprisingly low-key, which the book explains was intentional, right? Didn't want to provoke the Soviets or seem like gloating. The goal was Europe whole, free, and at peace.
Right. Then there were actions like the Panama invasion, Operation Just Cause, and leading that big coalition in the Gulf War, his famous line, "This will not stand."
The book also includes details showing his connection with the troops. That Thanksgiving visit, the story about the Navy SEAL with the Texas Rangers patch. Small things, but telling.
A really tough political moment the book dives into is that 1990 budget deal, agreeing to tax increases after his Read My Lips pledge.
Yeah, that was huge. The book frames it as a really difficult choice, necessary for the deficit, especially with crises abroad. Politically disastrous, though.
Oh, definitely. Fractured the Republican Party, caused a lot of bitterness, as the book says, but the argument presented is that it was maybe the responsible thing to do economically long-term.
It raises that classic tension, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Between campaign promises and the messy realities of governing.
Absolutely. Then comes the 1992 election defeat. The book mentions various factors, the sort of historical headwinds, third-party spoilers like Perot, maybe some campaign missteps.
But what the book really stresses about that loss is his reaction afterwards. Disappointment, sure, but incredible grace, zero bitterness.
Yeah, that anecdote about inviting Dana Carvey, the guy who famously impersonated him, to the White House after the election to entertain the staff. That speaks volumes about his character, his humor.
Then the book looks at his post-presidency, which sounds pretty active, all those parachute jumps.
Which the book connects back to the war, seeking a kind of closure for that bailout jump, even jumping on his 90th birthday.
Amazing. And his love for Walker's Point, family, speedboating on the Fidelity, just enjoying life.
The book also shares something very personal. The pain the Silverado savings and loan crisis involving his son Neil caused him reveals he actually considered not running for re-election because he was so worried about the impact on his son.
Wow. That really shows the depth of his protective love for his kids.
Definitely. And then there's that surprising friendship with Bill Clinton. Former rivals, raising funds together for disaster relief. The book even notes Clinton became quite deferential to him later on.
And other moments of character later in life? Like shaving his head in solidarity with a young boy fighting leukemia.
Yeah. So throughout these later chapters, the book keeps weaving back to those core themes. Service, resilience, family, integrity, and this real capacity for humor and connection.
Well, we've taken quite a journey through 41, A Portrait of My Father, exploring the personal side, the values that shaped this president. And if you find this kind of exploration valuable, digging into lives and ideas through books.
Remember to check out our Mindful Moments YouTube channel and, of course, our other deep dives right here.
Yeah, the picture painted by this book, it's definitely richer, more complex than just the political headlines, isn't it? It's a story of resilience, shaped by war, by adapting to new worlds, navigating huge political storms, and enduring really deep personal loss. It shows sides of George H.W. Bush the public maybe didn't always see.
It really leaves you thinking, doesn't it? How much more we can understand about public figures, their decisions, their impact, when we get a glimpse into their personal journeys, their core values, the experiences that really define them, like we do in accounts like this book.
So keep thinking critically about the stories you hear, especially about people in the public eye. For more explorations like this one, please subscribe. Maybe share this episode with someone who'd find this perspective on George H.W. Bush interesting.
And if you want to read the book yourself, 41, A Portrait of My Father, you should find a link to purchase it right there in the description.